Katie.
Who are we missing, Kate?
We have Randy Timmer, Randy Van Wynen, we have Tom Renner. I see Tom Stegman, and usually he's on his phone. And it looks like we have Chris Campbell. I see Kim and Sean, but I don't see their videos up.
So that's everybody, right?
Yes, it is.
You don't see
Okay.
my video, Kate?
No, I don't. I can hear you, but I don't see the video, no.
Huh. I can see me on the screen with all of you.
Well, as long as there's audio, we can start at 6 as we're scheduled.
Yep.
Since everybody's here. So I'm going to call the Beach Safety Committee meeting together for the April 22nd, 2021 date. And thank you everybody for more of your time this evening. And next up on the agenda will be the approval of the agenda.
Tom Stegman, I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay,
Chris Campbell, I'll second.
it's been moved and supported to approve the agenda. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Kate, if you call the roll.
Okay, Campbell,
Yes.
Doherty,
Yes.
Timmer,
Yes.
Van Wynen,
Yes.
Stegman,
Yes,
and Russell.
Yes,
Okay, moving on to item 3, approval of the minutes.
Sorry, I forget one more. Renner, please.
Oh, Renner,
Yes.
yes. Okay,
There we go.
all right. We're all square now?
We are.
All right, approval of the March 25th, 2021 meeting minutes.
I'll move that the minutes of the March meeting be approved.
Tom Stegman, I'll second Tom's motion.
Is there any other discussion? I have one item to add to that. It was written up as a motion to table what is on tonight's agenda, and that was actually a motion to postpone.
Okay, we can
Motion to
make that
table is used to move an item back later in a meeting, and postponement is for a future meeting. So if that would be corrected.
We will make those minutes corrected to note that motion to table should be crossed out to say motion to postpone.
Correct. Strike table and add postpone.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Okay, we'll call the roll.
Doherty,
Here.
is that a yes?
Yes.
Timmer,
Yes.
Van Wynen,
Yes.
Stegman,
Yes,
Russell,
yes,
Renner,
Yes,
Campbell.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carried, sir.
Okay. Did we need to do a roll call for who was? We didn't have that on the agenda. I'm just curious.
No, I did make note of when I was naming off, I guess the agenda role that everyone is present.
Okay. Very good. So agenda item 4 tonight is committee discussion, continuing the discussion topics and of the beach safety plan. And tonight we're going to look at regulation and enforcement with subcategories of existing ordinances, enforcement, emergency services, communication and public outreach. And I guess from here, I'll turn it over to Kate for any introductions. And I assume you're going to be sharing some some PowerPoints on the screen tonight.
That's correct. So tonight we have a slate of presenters once again. We have Chief Thompson, we have Chief Hins. So Chief Thompson from the Police Department, Chief Hins from Shays. We also have Nick Curcio back again for an update on some enforcement strategies, as well as we also have Marianne Milkey from Victim Services to talk about that particular topic. So I believe first up we have the Police Department. So Natalie Thompson.
Okay, welcome, Natalie.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening.
So let me get her started here. And share my screen. Can everyone see my shared screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we have Chief Thompson here today, and Chief, if you want, just let me know when you want to advance the slide, and I will go ahead and make that slide move.
Okay, we'll continue to the first slide.
Okay. Is staffing on duty personnel the right one? You want to go one more?
Yeah, we'll go to number 2, the next one.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So the South Haven Police Department current staffing. Oops. Sorry, I gotta get my screen back up here. Bear with me. I just clicked on my view. Sorry. Okay, well, there.
Is this the right slide or back one?
Yeah, I hit something on my view. I apologize. I've got like 3 separate screens. I'm just trying to get back to the standard view.
Okay.
My apologies.
Better you than me, Natalie.
So let me, I've got it, the location. Okay, so staffing our on-duty personnel. The police department has 14 officers assigned to road patrol year-round. We have 4 squads with 3 officers each assigned to a squad. And we also have 2 canine units that are on swing shifts. These squads include 2 day shifts from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. and 2 night shifts from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. Our canine units work alternating days. They generally work what we call a swing shift, which is typically 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. They also typically will flex in case we're short on one of the shifts. So on average, our police department at any given time, we have an average of 3 officers on duty at a time. The jurisdiction area includes the city of South Haven and South Haven Township, which is approximately 23 square miles. We can go to the next slide. Calls for service. The South Haven Police Department responds to approximately 200 to 300 calls for service, and that is each month during the fall and winter months, and approximately 400 to 500 calls of service per month during the summer months. Officers' main responsibilities involve responding to criminal complaints and criminal complaints and the proactive enforcement of law violations. 911 calls and other emergency life-saving calls remain the priority for our response. The police department is trained in basic first aid, CPR, and use of the AED, or the automated external defibrillator. And we are trained, we are certified. Our whole department goes through that training, which we have all in one class every 2 years. We're fortunate to have an in-house instructor, Officer Kevin Wildy, and he keeps us current on all of that training. Often, officers are dispatched to medical calls to assist SHAEs when necessary. This assistance may involve rendering of life-saving measures, scene safety, and assistance with patients to provide safety for SHAEs responding personnel. The police department's average response time for life safety calls is approximately 3 minutes. Next slide, water safety training. The police department trains every 2 years in water rescue. Goals include proper use of water rescue equipment and safely conducting or assisting in a water rescue. This training is comprised of 4 hours total training. There is classroom lecture on types of currents, where they are typically found, dangers associated with them and how to escape, and also how to recognize distressed swimmers and those actively drowning. We do these training practicals through the years. We've used South Haven High School pool, the Wellness Center, and most recently we've used Lake Arvesta. Our rescue equipment we have in each of the patrol cars. We have Explorers now, so they'd be in the back hatch area. We go over how to quickly get those, throwing of throw bags to victims in the water. We practice rescue techniques, practice safety release, and do mock rescues. Sergeant Adam DeBoer, one of our 2 nighttime sergeants, conducts this training. And what isn't in the slide, Sergeant DeBoer, he's got some pretty extensive background and training. He attended Swiftwater Rescue School training in Indiana. He has also attended and completed the California State Lifeguard Rescue Training Program, which was a 100-hour school. And he is also a current member of the CSLA, the California Life Saving Association, and also the USLA, the United States Life Saving Association. So we're fortunate to have Sergeant DeBoer's training and skills to help us with our training. Okay, I think next slide, water rescue equipment. So each of our patrol vehicles, and this is including our K9 units, all of our road patrol officers' vehicles are equipped with Extraport Universal Rescue PFD, or personal flotation device, an RQ3 75 feet throw bag, an RQ3 storm helmet, and Voight duck feet fins. So each patrol car, we have a large duffel bag, and we have that rescue equipment in each of the cars. The next slide just shows a picture of one of our cars and what that equipment looks like. Next slide, existing ordinances applicable. So I've listed a couple of the ordinance pertinent to water safety. Number 1 is section 58-91, swimming in the Black River, swimming or wading in the Black River, with the exception of launching a boat is prohibited, and that part of the Black River from both the north and south pier heads, and the upriver to the corporate limits of the city. A second ordinance I've referenced that is applicable to water safety is section 58-101. Diving, jumping from, or swimming near the South Haven Lake Michigan piers is prohibited. Shall be unlawful for any person to dive or jump from a South Haven Lake Michigan pier. It shall be unlawful also for any person to swim within 50 feet from a South Haven Lake, Michigan pier. It is also unlawful for any person to push, shove, or cause any person to fall, dive, jump from any portion of a pier into Lake Michigan or into the Black River. The next slide on enforcement. Generally, any enforcement of these ordinances occur when a call is received reporting such violation. In some instances, if we happen to be at the beach, we can observe potentially one of these violations, but generally speaking, when these are called in is when we'll respond. If officers can locate the violators, a citation can be issued. Swimming in the Black River is a misdemeanor. Pier jumping, swimming within 50 feet of the piers is a civil infraction for a first offense, and then becomes a misdemeanor if a second offense is committed within 90 days. So if a misdemeanor is occurring in the officer's presence, for example, swimming in the Black River, we arrive, someone is swimming in the Black River, we can make an arrest if we observe that. Enforcement of other applicable water safety ordinances, such as section 58-87, operation of vessels in swimming areas. This generally falls to the enforcement efforts of the Van Buren County Sheriff's Department Marine Patrol. If they are on duty at the time on Lake Michigan, obviously availability of a boat is normally necessary to enforce these types of waterway violations. Next slide, our response. Due to the fact that officers are already out on patrol, we typically arrive shortly before shays when dispatched. So the officer's responsibilities include when we are dispatched to a water rescue safety incident, is gathering as much information as we can while we're en route, and we rely on the dispatcher who hopefully is talking to a caller. So we want to know who is calling so we can potentially locate them when we arrive on scene. How many individuals are needing assistance? Is there one, two, multiple? And the last known location of that person needing assistance. That is probably crucial. Once officers arrive on scene, communication is a top priority. When the officer arrives on scene, they want to relay any information that they have to provide assessment to other responding officers, to shays, other first responders. We want to try and locate who's calling. Those can be crucial witnesses to help in locating the person who's in distress. And then obviously in extreme measures, initiate water rescue efforts with the equipment that we have available. And then from there, obviously we would provide any assistance to shays and any of the other responding agencies as much as we can provide. Next slide. So there are many available resources that assist. I'm just going to speak about two. The first, just an invaluable organization within Van Buren County, the Van Buren County Victim Services Unit. Mary Ann Milkey, who graciously agreed to provide information tonight to the committee. She will be providing an overview of the program and the resources available to assist individuals experiencing trauma and tragedy. And the next resource, I wasn't able to get anyone to provide a presentation tonight, but they would potentially be willing at a future meeting. Reached out to the United States Coast Guard St. Joseph Station. So this information was provided by them. The station will respond to both in any water-based emergency within their area of responsibility, and that does include South Haven beaches and the Black River up to the boat launch. The Coast Guard can also deploy air assets as deemed necessary. Typically, helicopters are deployed from Muskegon, Detroit, or Traverse City. Helicopters may also deploy rescue swimmers and act as a search asset from the air. Their boats that they have available include a 29-foot response boat and also a 45-foot response boat. And generally speaking, contact or request for assistance from the U.S. Coast Guard is made by Shays, and it's sometimes from the Van Buren County Central Dispatch will contact them. So that is what I have. Is there any questions about what I've talked about?
Do any of the committee members have a question for the chief?
I do, thank you. Was wondering, Chief, of the 400 to 500 calls each summer that you get, how many do you think, like ballpark, are to the beach area specifically?
Right, that is a pretty small number. Those numbers include all the criminal complaints and numbers overall. And I just looked up the ones where we had a significant assisting rescue effort. But out of those, the calls that were available for water rescue are pretty low. Because like, again, our priority is responding to criminal complaints.
I saw too on your response slide call out that you aid in rescue in extreme measures. Can you tell me what constitutes an extreme measure?
Well, that is based on the situation that the officer observes. We had a couple last year. A lot of this is based on the officer's skills and capability and what the situation is. I know we had a sergeant last year who was there. He also had another officer who was able to stay on the beach and communicate for him. So he made that decision to utilize his gear and attempt to go in and help with a rescue. So it is very much based on the situation. If there's hopefully more than one officer on scene, because what is dangerous for an officer is just to, go in and then nobody knows where he or she is. So I think in situations where there are at least two officers, one can stay on land to help communicate what's going on, where the victim, the person in need of assistance is, as well as the officer. So in those situations, the officers will go in and attempt to rescue.
Anybody else? Chris?
When you say a very small number of calls, are we saying under 20, under 10, or under 100? Rough. I'm just saying rough, under
Yeah.
5.
Last year was unusual, and last year we responded to more than in previous years. But for a summer, generally, I would say last year, and again, we also will get dispatched to assist Shays, and that doesn't always mean we're in the water. But last summer it was a little under 20, right around 20. But that doesn't mean all 20 times we were actually entering the water. Those were just the times that we provided some type of assistance, whether it's life rendering aid, going into the water, assisting Shays.
Okay, so that could be anybody from, I guess was there heart attacks or something? There were some issues on the beach last year too. I saw, we had a couple calls ourselves. I guess someone tipped a canoe in the river.
Yes, and I wish we had a better way to really separate our types of responses, because I know we did have a number of medical calls to assist Shays for individuals who had slipped and fell on the pier and were injured. So that would count as an assist to Shays, not necessarily a water rescue, but we kind of classify beach-related incidents and assists. And we did have a higher number of those last year, and I think that was just due to the high water levels, and at any given time, it was very slippery and there was water over the pier.
Natalie, are you guys dispatched before Shays on calls? Do you know?
You know, I believe that the Van Buren County Dispatch, and Brandon can clarify this or correct me if I'm mistaken, but in our patrol cars now, we no longer can hear fire and EMS dispatch. In the past, it was nice because we had 2 radios. So I could listen, I could hear Shays being dispatched, and then generally within a minute, the police would get dispatched to assist. So without having that capability anymore, how as I understand it is Van Buren County Dispatch will automatically dispatch Shays. And then, you know, very shortly thereafter, they will dispatch us to assist. But it's difficult now because we used to be able to go en route right when Shays was dispatched if we were listening to their radio, but now we don't have that capability. And like I said, if I'm incorrect on that, Brandon, I will hope will correct me, but generally I think they get Shays en route first.
I do.
Yep.
Yeah, Sean.
Hey, Chief, Sean Russell here. Just a question for you, because I know you were a police officer in the city back when we had lifeguards, at least for a while. Do you remember how many years you were a police officer when we had guards?
Well, I can tell you, I started in 1992. I was a seasonal officer in 1992. There were 8 of us. As of 93, when I was hired full-time, I was pretty much on a midnight shift for a lot of years. So after that time, I really wasn't working during the day and didn't have a lot of contact with the lifeguards just because I was on a midnight shift.
Sure. Well, my question is regarding just what you do remember and your experience since then about, in particular, about prevention and education. Since you kind of transitioned and obviously the period where we don't have them now, we've talked about a lot of things. I think you've been on the call for some of them with signage and, you know, some community outreach stuff and whatnot, in addition to having the police officers down there, of course, which I know you guys do a lot of, especially throughout the summer. Is there something else other than what you've heard, or even, you know, a better option than lifeguards from what you've heard, whether it's signage or whatever, that we need to be paying more attention to or thinking about more than lifeguards? You know, I'm a lifeguard guy, right? There's no secret about that. But what I'm wondering for the prevention, I mean, that's where I think the lifeguards really earn a lot of their money, right? Is before the event even happens. That prevention, that education, that intermingling with the public right down there on the beach. Is there something from your experience, either before, you know, when we had lifeguards or now, that you've seen that we should be thinking about? Or like, is there another idea that maybe we have missed in the committee, is what I'm curious about.
Right. And thank you for asking, Sean. And that's an excellent question. I really think that a lot of the preventative ideas that have already been talked about by the committee, you can never do enough to educate, you know, take preventative measures, whether it be signing. You know, Shays was able to have the project with, you know, the placemats. I think that were distributed to a lot of the, you know, the visitors to the rental homes. You know, I think that any, you know, creative outside the box form of educating, you know, communicating the dangers. You know, of course, signs, I think we've discussed, maybe we can enhance some of the signage that we have. But beyond that, just, you know, other information to get it out to the public. Not just, you know, here are the ordinances, you can get in trouble for violating them, but more just safety oriented education, and whether that be on signs or, you know, other ideas like, you know, Brandon utilized to get the information to young children and parents. I think that's probably one of the best, proactive measures is just the education. Because generally speaking, in the summer, we're lucky to get people from all over visiting our beaches and, just maybe enhancing our abilities to really get as many people educated who may be visiting our beaches for the first time.
Yeah,
Well, whether that be signage, I mean, we don't want our whole beach coated with signs, but maybe,
right.
tweaking or enhancing some of our existing signage, maybe better visibility, have them in more, precise places, where maybe people pay for beach parking or, but, so I would say, some of the ideas that have already been discussed, I think those are great. And I think we can always improve on a lot of that.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chief, given Sergeant DeBoer's training, do you think that there are ways that we could better leverage his skill set on the prevention side? Are there opportunities there from your perspective?
Yes, and Sergeant DeBoer he's a great asset to our department, very knowledgeable. He is one of 2 officers on a night shift. So he's a little bit limited right now. He is a night supervisor for the police department. But I'm sure he would be willing to participate or, provide any of his knowledge, or ideas, in the future should, he be summoned on to talk or give recommendations. Right now, we count on him to run a night shift. So, but yeah, we're just fortunate, really to have him to be able to provide training in-house to our department.
Okay. Any other questions?
One last thing regarding Sergeant DeBoer. Does he have opportunity? Has he been asked to come in and speak to the committee? Do you know?
I have not specifically asked him. He potentially, if the city would like to ask him, that could be a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I talked to him last night. It's his birthday today. He did sound like he's a little busy though, right now. He's got a lot going on. But yeah, so he's getting older. He used to actually work at one of my rental stands on the side for fun, just so he can hang out with his family at the same time.
Yeah.
So just to be clear though, this is Sean. He's our most experienced expert for beach rescues and lifeguarding. And we haven't asked him to be here in 5 months. Is that checks, right? I just want to make sure I understood that, like that we never asked. Kate, does that check?
That's right. I have not asked him. I've asked the chiefs who are leaders of the department to get the information that we're looking at, that we have been looking at.
Okay, because I just heard the chief say that the city didn't ask, and now I'm hearing you say that the chief didn't ask. So maybe, yeah, we need to re-attack that at some point. I mean, because he sounds like the expert, so I'd love to hear from him.
I think the only issue, just to bring in the point that, and I've talked to Adam many times about this, we've even debated it over the years. We met a long time ago over paddle boards and surfing, but anyways, the only thing I thought with this with Adam is that Adam doesn't live here. He does work here, but Adam lives closer to Saugatuck. So in my opinion, it's great to have his knowledge, but my understanding is we wanted people from this area.
And I should probably clarify that I have talked with Adam, we have met. And what I guess I'm saying is that we've collected information and we're presenting that to the committee. I guess we're now talking about enforcement and regulation. I didn't think it was appropriate to have Adam here talking about lifeguarding portion when we're talking about what's our existing regulation and enforcement. If I'm wrong on that, I'd be more than happy to bring him back at a later meeting.
Yeah, Kate, this is Sean again. I thought we asked specifically if he could be here for the current practices. When we were covering past practices that I spoke a lot on, obviously. I thought it was during that meeting that we we were looking to see if Adam could come. And I know, I thought you'd have to look at the tapes to see, but I think that the chief said that he couldn't make that particular meeting because he was on night shift, or he had a case or something he was working. But I'm pretty sure we specifically asked for his, current practice knowledge and his
Sure.
opinion. Again, I'd like his opinion as far as the best practices and what we should be doing. Opinion only, because he sounds like he's been out there doing the training that we sent him to.
And Sean, not to always make excuses for Sergeant DeBoer because he is very busy, but just for example, tonight, we had someone call in and we had one officer working tonight. So I actually had to order an officer in tonight. So we've got a minimum of 2. So
Yeah.
and I'm not making excuses. I mean, we're just grateful to have Adam's experience and his training just to get the rest of us, trained with his knowledge. But again, his priority, at least for the police department right now, is, he's a great supervisor in a night shift. And, tonight is an example. He's one of, 2 officers working on road patrol.
And
Yeah.
I think Natalie's doing a good job as a chief, and she is the chief of police, and hopefully she can represent what the department does and how they effectuate the regulations and enforcements. So with that being said, it might be a good idea, if there's no more questions, to move along to the next position or the next speaker, right? Chairman Stegman?
Yeah, the commissioners' questions are done. I know there were a couple that haven't asked any questions yet. So seeing no hands, then we can move on to, thank you, Natalie, and we can move on to Chief Hens.
I do think we have down in the memo, we were going to go with Nick Curcio for authority at the Beach and Wildlife.
All right, so he's doing what part of this?
So Nick kind of does it's kind of like an amalgamation of the existing ordinances, which Natalie covered, and we're talking about also enforcement, which is authority at the beach and waterline. This is kind of clarifying some ideas that came up at our last meeting. So Nick
Okay.
did additional legal
All
research.
right, I understand how it's structured. Okay, sorry about that, Brandon. So Nick, we'll let you take the floor now and add a little more detail.
Okay, great. Kate, would it be possible to get the PowerPoint presentation up on the screen?
Sure, let me go ahead and get that for you.
Okay.
And you want me to just go ahead and share my screen?
Yeah, that would be great.
Sure.
And as Kate mentioned, this is kind of a follow-up on some questions that were asked at the last meeting about what is a municipality's jurisdiction in terms of regulating the water of the Great Lakes. I kind of said off the cuff that my understanding was that there's some limitations on what a municipality can do, and suggested that it might not even be able to close the water to swimming just based on things that have been said at meetings like this over the years. After doing some research, it looks like that's probably not true, and that municipalities do have some ability to regulate both the beaches themselves, being the shoreland, as well as the water. And we'll get into that a little bit in this presentation. So this topic is a little bit complicated, and I think there's some misconceptions around it, because the Great Lakes are a place where a lot of governmental jurisdiction overlaps. So all 3 major levels of government have some role to play in regulating the Great Lakes, that being the federal government, the state government, and municipal government as well. Moving on to the next slide, just kind of a brief overview of how that overlap tends to take shape. The federal government's primary interest is in facilitating interstate and international trade on the Great Lakes. All of the Great Lakes have long served as shipping routes between the Midwestern states and as well as the US and Canada. So there are a number of criminal statutes that will apply to kind of maritime type jurisdiction over the Great Lakes. And as this community knows, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering is also very involved in permitting for any construction on the Great Lakes. And that kind of ties to the federal government's interest in making sure that the lakes continue to be navigable to vessels.
Next slide.
Yeah, moving to the next slide. So while the federal government's interest is pretty limited to just the navigability of the lakes, the states have a kind of a broader and more significant regulatory interest in that large portions of the lake are within the state of Michigan's physical boundaries, even though they're sometimes referred to as federal waters. As you can see from this map here, the boundaries of the state of Michigan basically stretch to the halfway point of each of the lakes that surround it. As a result of this, the state regulates the lakes in a number of ways. Their environmental regulation is a very big area the state is active in. Another area, it comes primarily through the court system, and it's referred to as the public trust doctrine. And we'll talk about this a little bit later in the presentation, but the basic idea is that the state has an obligation to make sure that the lakes and other natural resources in the state are preserved and made accessible to the citizens of the state. So that has some legal doctrinal implications that we'll get into in some later slides. So moving to the next slide. The city's interest, technically the boundaries of the city stop, with the city charter says at Lake Michigan, which I think most people interpret it to mean at the water's edge. That clearly means that the city has direct regulatory authority over the sands, the shores of the beach, because that is directly within its jurisdiction. But there are also some state statutes that give it what's called extraterritorial jurisdiction, the ability to regulate beyond its boundaries, at least in certain circumstances. And we'll get into some of those statutes in later slides, but that's kind of a new concept that's maybe somewhat counter to what I stated off the cuff in the last meeting we wanted to update the committee on. So moving to the next part. So again, kind of going back to the misconceptions we talked about earlier, it's sometimes said that the public has a right to swim in Lake Michigan and that state and local governments cannot interfere with that right. In reality, it appears it's quite a bit more complicated than that, and that local governments do have limited jurisdiction to regulate the waters of the Great Lakes, subject to certain considerations. The first consideration being the public trust doctrine, which we referenced earlier, and the second being it has to be tied to a specific statutory grant from the legislature. So move to the next slide. The public trust doctrine, as we said, is the principle that the state has an obligation to protect natural resources and make them accessible. This has an implication both on what private parties can do with their land. It comes up, we'll talk about the case in a minute, but also in terms of how government can regulate both its own property adjoining the lake, as well as private property adjoining the lake. There's a particularly famous case from the Michigan Supreme Court, I think about 10, maybe 15 years ago, holding that private property owners cannot exclude the public from walking on the shore of the Great Lakes. Basically, that land is public land, even if the property owner's boundary or legal description goes right up to the shore's edge. The public retains the right to walk lakeward of the high water mark up and down the beach. That's a topic that's come up a lot with the erosion issues in the city. So I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with that case. Moving to the next slide. Sometimes I think that case gets misstated as kind of understood as creating an absolute right to access Lake Michigan beaches. In reality, that's not. It doesn't quite go that far. The generally accepted view among attorneys and others who kind of specialize in natural resource law is that the public trust doctrine allows government to impose reasonable regulations designed to protect the health, safety, and welfare. There's not a lot of Michigan case law on this, but there are cases from other jurisdictions that are interesting and probably would be persuasive in a Michigan court. So, for example, on the next slide, we have a case from New Jersey that's kind of directly on point for what the topics that we're talking about. It involved a community that issued citations to individuals who continued surfing on the ocean after local authorities determined that the beaches were too dangerous and water conditions were too dangerous for swimming and surfing and other activities. The defendants argued that the citations violated the public trust doctrine basically the government didn't have the power to keep them out of the water because they had a right to access it. And the appeals court rejected that challenge and said that it's a legitimate exercise of police power to close beaches, preclude the use of, that's cut off, but I think it says public resources, falling within the public trust doctrine, even the public health, safety, and welfare is threatened. And again, this isn't binding in Michigan, but that's likely how a Michigan court would look at this issue. So moving to the next slide, in addition to the public trust doctrine, the city would also, if the city wanted to adopt new ordinances, perhaps ordinances that prohibit swimming under certain conditions, have to consider its statutory authority to do that. Generally, municipalities are only authorized to prohibit conduct within their own borders. The lake itself is outside the borders, but we do think there are some exceptions that would allow the city to do that if it were interested. So moving to the next slide, there's a state statute that gives municipalities concurrent criminal jurisdiction to enforce criminal laws. This might arguably justify that kind of regulation. It's not entirely clear because it could be read as only allowing municipalities to enforce state statutes that are already on the books as opposed to writing their own criminal laws. But so that's one potential source of authority. The next, and in my opinion, more promising source of authority on the next slide is this one that talks about municipalities have the full authority to adopt ordinances and regulations for the management and control of municipal property. Obviously, the beaches themselves are municipal property, and it would seem that this would authorize the city to regulate people who basically use the beach to access the water at unsafe times when the city deems that the waters aren't safe for swimming or other activities. So we did a little bit, if you move to the next slide, Kate, we did some research about whether other communities have ordinances of that nature and found that for the most part, it appears that a lot of communities on Lake Michigan do not have that type of ordinance, but there are some that do. The city of Marquette is not on Lake Michigan, but it does border on a Great Lake, has a ordinance that we stated here that allows the harbor master, which is kind of a designated official, to have the authority to close beaches, and then violation of that closure of beach closures is punishable, I believe, as a civil infraction under that ordinance, if I recall. And then similarly, Berrien County runs a public beach on Lake Michigan called Silver Beach, and they have an ordinance governing that beach that says that swimming is not permitted on red flag conditions. It's a little bit different model than the Marquette ordinance. Rather than having an official that's making the call for closure, it's kind of tied to the NOAA flag standards, and it automatically becomes prohibited when the red flag conditions are present. So that's two kind of models for doing this that we found in other Michigan communities. So if we move to the next slide, final thoughts are just that while there are a number of considerations that go into this, it appears that it would be within the city's power to prohibit beachgoers from entering the water during dangerous weather events. If there's interest in doing that, the city should carefully draft regulations that describe who makes the decision to close the beaches and what standards and procedures are used to make those decisions on any given day. And with that, if the committee has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Hey, Chris, you have a question.
Yeah, so with the surfing situation, so just so we're clear and everyone's clear, so if the city decided to close the beaches, kiteboarders, surfers, anybody that actually uses the water, who needs wind, honestly, we need a red flag day to actually go kiteboarding or surf, would no longer be able to do that.
I mean, I think it would be within the city's power to do that if it determined that that's a dangerous thing to do. You could write a more narrowly tailored regulation that swimming is prohibited on red flag days as opposed to other activities in the water.
But could that be in a situation, because so almost any day somebody can go kiteboarding, it has to usually be at least yellow, but most of the time it's got to be red. You got to have enough wind that'll create wave action. Same thing with surfing or jet skiers that are, going out there and trying to do freestanding jet skiing. But the problem is a surfer has to paddle out. Kiteboarder drops his kite in the water. He's got to swim. Where does that become considered? Is that considered swimming then in that aspect?
Yeah, I guess you could try to define around it. And the other thing I would say is that there are multiple ways of doing this. So Silver Beach has the no swimming on red flag days, but you could set up some type of higher standard for when the beach is closed. To do that, you've got to come up with your own criteria, because again, NOAA only has the red flag. They only have the three flag system, and the city would have to then kind of develop something above and beyond that, to write a prohibition that way. But that's an interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I didn't even know that you had to have kind of an elevated flag scenario in order to engage in those type of activities. So that's definitely a consideration in looking at all of this.
Okay.
Well, Nick, you could exclude that, couldn't you, in the ordinance?
You could, yes. But I think what Councilmember Campbell is saying is that it's kind of, you do have to do some baseline swimming to even get out there in the first place. And that becomes kind of tricky from an enforcement standpoint. But yes, you could try to write around that problem in the ordinance.
What about blocking off the piers with gates or some kind of barrier?
So the piers are, I think that's something to look into, and I think that City Manager Hosier has been looking into that. Obviously, as you know, the piers themselves are federal property, but my understanding is that the federal government will, in some circumstances, work with municipalities about gating them off if there's a desire to do that. There probably needs to be some type of agreement in effect as to when and how that happens.
That's correct. We've had those conversations, and really it's an agreement similar to what we're going to have, like we have out there for the life rings and throw bags. It's an agreement from the Corps to allow placement of anything on their property, and of course an assignment of liability.
So just want to make sure that I'm understanding everything and I'm not missing anything. So I want to restate a little bit. What I'm hearing is that as it relates to what our focus is, which is improving beach safety, there's nothing currently preventing the city from closing down the beach and maybe even the public swim area, and then enforcing that closure when conditions warrant it. Is that correct?
Well, we don't have an ordinance in place that sets a procedure to do that. Well, I guess what I'm saying is it would be within the city's authority to come up with an ordinance like that. And a few communities do have those.
Perfect, thank you.
That appears to be the minority, but there is the ability to do that, and some do.
And I think that's just from the legal standpoint. From the actual physical standpoint, you're talking a lot of gates or a lot of manpower to figure that out too, but that's just from the legal side.
Right. I mean, there's obviously enforcement issues that come with that. You'd have to have an officer or somebody at the beach on the dangerous condition days to make sure it's being complied with. So I'm speaking only about the legality of it.
Or something like lifeguards to enforce that.
That would be an option as well.
Cool.
Lifeguards be empowered to issue tickets?
Lifeguards would not have the ability to issue tickets. It would be.
So the idea of lifeguards enforcing this is really mute, right?
No,
it's not mute. We did it for 40 years, Tom.
How many tickets did the lifeguards issue over your 40 years?
0. We never had to. We never had to. I had a radio on my hip where if it got to that point, we just called the police officers and they came down there and took care of it.
And let's keep the questions related to Nick for right now, and then the commission can or the committee can debate one another, if you would.
I have a question for Nick. On the flags in particular right now, and I can't remember. I know somebody had mentioned, I think Mr. Van Wynen or somebody had said to go take a look at the signs, and I just forgot to look this specifically. But right now, do the signs indicate that there's no swimming on red flag days? And if so, I guess that's just a suggestion, right? Since we have no ordinance, or can you speak to that, Nick?
I don't know what the signs indicate. I know the red flag itself, just what it means as when it's put out by NOAA. It just means it's
Sure.
dangerous swimming conditions. It doesn't necessarily mean it's illegal to,
Okay.
obviously, NOAA doesn't have that authority, but a community could tie its own prohibitions to the flags, like, for example, Berrien County has done, but the city hasn't done that, so.
Okay.
Nick, what
So
you're
it's-
saying is City of South Haven has not codified the red flag.
Correct, right,
So right now, really what it says is just dangerous conditions.
yes.
I guess it kind of suggests no swimming, but it doesn't, it can't really say that because we can't say that because we haven't codified it. Does that check?
I mean, I don't know if it says it or not, but it's not legally enforceable
Got it.
in
Okay.
terms of issuing citations, things like that.
And I would think where Nick gave the example of the New Jersey case, and he mentioned, I think it was 780.51 for the state of Michigan and City of Marquette and Silver Beach. At a glance, what I saw in there, it was codified, and it was like a no entry language for a red flag.
Right.
No matter if you're swimming or kiteboarding, it was straight up no entry.
Those looked like they would apply to kiteboarding as well.
Yeah, that's what I said. No entry applies to all.
Right. Yeah, the kiteboarding thing is something, again, I hadn't thought of. That makes things a little bit tricky to exclude that activity out, but.
Right.
We're actually one of the premier locations in Michigan. Us and Grand Haven are the actually largest spots for it. That's why we get people from Ohio, Indiana. We've even had people from California and Florida come here a lot. Just because, and we've been featured in magazines. In fact, I actually used to write for one of the magazines once in a while too, for Kiteboarder magazine.
And that's because we don't have a lot of rocks, correct?
Rocks, and we have such a good, the way our pier is, it's shorter, it creates a good push from the winds. So if we have a north wind, we get waves. If we have a south wind, we get that warm air coming through and just smooth rollers. It's great.
Hey, Nick, so just to keep it on the
Wait a
legal
second,
thing.
Sean. Wait a second, Sean. Randy had his hand up.
What, me?
No, Timmer.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Hey, Nick, question for you. So going back to the pier itself. So if our officers right now can write a ticket for somebody jumping off the pier, would that already give us the legal power to barricade that pier, or do we have to go back through that whole system? It seems to me if we're already taking the legal power to write a citation from it.
Yeah, it does require that agreement with the Coast Guard because it's not city property, and you've just to kind of get their okay before you put the barricade in front of it. I guess the city jurisdiction comes in when they jump off the pier, then they're in the water, and that's why we can write the ticket, but don't have the ability to barricade, is my understanding.
Okay. And then one more thing on that, if we were to install something like that in the future, would it have to be an officer that shut that, or can somebody be designated? Do you know?
It should be a city employee, but it doesn't
Okay.
have to be a police officer, I wouldn't think, unless the Coast Guard, unless the Army Corps required that. I would
Okay.
think it'd be okay with any city employee.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sean.
Yeah, for Nick, sorry, am I muted? No. So for Nick, to the specifics about the surfing or windsurfing, kiteboarding, et cetera, could we, this might be way more deep than you looked at right now, and no big deal if it is, but could we do a lane like we do for jet skis where they have a designated area to transition legally, regardless of the wave condition or the beach condition flags, where they can transition legally to where they then can kiteboard or whatever they do outside of the swim area? Can we set that up?
That sounds possible to me. It's not something I've thought about. I'm not even sure how the swim area is set up by buoys. Is that correct?
Checks.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see a reason why you couldn't put buoys for another purpose. Yeah, off the top of my head, I would say yes. But again,
Nick?
I haven't researched that at all.
Nick, there's a lot of
Hang
code.
hang on a second. Sean, was that it for your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then Chris, and then
Um,
Randy after that.
That could be a little tough. We would need at least 300 feet. Your kite lines are about 100 feet, so you always want to give yourself an extra 100 feet when you pass another kiter. So one goes high, one goes low with wind direction. But I mean, for kiteboarding, that could be done. It just would need quite a, I guess, I don't want a wide berth, I guess, a wide spacing.
Okay. All right, Randy.
Nick, a lot of your codes, a lot of the building codes and that, there's exceptions in there for all kinds of stuff. It just seems like if we did have an ordinance and you just put kiteboarding, surfing was exempt,
Yeah,
wouldn't that just exempt it?
I think you could do that. Yeah.
I mean, without getting into, having to write a lot of stuff, just have an exemption for such and such.
Yeah, that seems possible.
Because really, I mean, even now, if they're in a swim area, that's swim area. Nobody's in there because it's rough, but you know what? We don't pay attention to it. But it just seems like it would be easy just to put an exemption.
Mm-hmm. I think that's doable.
Okay, any other questions for Nick? All right, well, thank you, Nick. And then is this where Brandon wants to come in at this time?
Yes, this would be when Brandon gets to come in and talk about Shays, what they do, what their training is, and all sorts of other information about Shays. So Brandon, I see you're ready. Go ahead and share your screen.
All right, evening, y'all. I'm going to share my screen here. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right. If I get a little too windy, feel free to stop me, Tim. I'm very good at that. So if I tend to start carrying over. So thank you all for having me on. First thing I wanted to do was just kind of go over a few objectives that are included in this slide. And there we go. I just wanted to give a quick background on Shays' history, how we were formed, things like that, our response and staffing, call volume, statistics, our dispatch procedures. I have a couple things written down there after Chief Thompson had mentioned a few things as well that I'm gonna make a note of. Our personnel and agency response, equipment, training, the beach flag warning system, goals, challenges, costs, public outreach, grant awards, and conclusions. So first of all, Shays was formed in 1996. We're actually an authority. We cover South Haven City, South Haven Township, Casco Township, and Geneva Township. And we cover about 120 square miles, around 15,000 residents, which jumps to around 30,000 in the summer months from visitors and such. And we provide fire and EMS. We have an ALS transport and ambulance service. We have four ambulances that are all ALS certified. We have probably about 17 or 18 pieces of different apparatus that we operate out of 3 stations. And I'll get a little bit more into staffing on the next slide. But we switched to an authority when Chief Van Wynen was here back in '96. They saw just the advantages of pooling everybody's resources, and it's worked out great. And we just re-upped this year, actually, so we had our 25-year anniversary. Let's see. Staffing and response. We're a combination department. We have career staff and paid on call staff. And our career staff are mostly stationed at Station 3, our main station here on Blue Star. If we have enough staffing for the day, we'll send some personnel out to Station 2, our station out in Geneva, which is smack dab in the middle of our coverage area. And our station up in Casco is manned mostly by paid on call, but if we have some extra employees, we'll run them up there sometimes. We have 17 career employees. That includes the chief, deputy chief, our 2 assistant inspectors, and we have 13 24-hour personnel. And we have 2-person minimum staffing, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, depending on the day. And we have 28 paid on call personnel. Those are our quote unquote volunteers, you know, the term that was used in the past. Essentially just, you know, anybody in town that's interested in joining can take the classes. You know, a lot of us started out that way and respond to calls as we can. If anybody wants to talk about any paid on call opportunities after the meeting, let me know. We're always looking for help. But those are our personnel that are responding right to the scenes, that, you know, in their private vehicles, they'll carry their bunker gear with them for fire scenes. Our EMS trained personnel will carry jump gags or jump kits with them. And we used a grant from Albemarle last year to outfit all our paid on call with their own personal PFDs if they happen to be in the area and could respond for a water rescue. South Haven City is about 42% of our calls for service. That includes fire and EMS. South Haven Township about 23%. Geneva Township and Casco make up the remainder. So, I mean, South Haven City's population is what, around 4,600 people, not including the summer months. And we still run a majority of our calls in the city limits. So average response time in the city, right around 4 minutes. Our North Beach response time is 3.5 minutes, South Beach 3.5. If you were to whittle that down a little bit, I think we could get it a little bit better. I was having a conversation with Chief Anawina not too long ago regarding this, that the times aren't as accurate as they used to be when we went away. When we started going solely to Van Buren County Dispatch, they do a great job. It's a great dispatch center, but I think we lose a few seconds here and there, maybe just in the documentation side of it. But all in all, still pretty good for the city, very good for the city. In 2020, we responded to nearly 2,400 calls of service. 1,730 were EMS, 628 were fire calls, 23 were water response calls only, North and South Beach. South Beach had the larger average. I meant to put that number on here, but I want to say, I would say out of those 23, actually I do have it listed on a later slide. I think 18 or 14 were South Beach. 95% of the water response calls occurred between the hours of 1 p and 8 p. The other 5% was actually not, it was a suicide attempt that I don't want to get too much in detail because of legal reasons, but so that was just in the morning. So that kind of threw that number off, but a majority of the calls are in that afternoon time frame. And we are dispatched, our career and our paid on call personnel are dispatched over pagers. The call comes into dispatch. They collect the information, tone us out on pagers. These beep, they tell us where to go. We respond accordingly. And whether it's Van Buren or Allegan, depending on which side of the county you're calling on, most of our calls will go direct to Van Buren. And here's a couple water-related incident stats. All the calls, and then I'm after our previous meetings that we've sat in on, and Chief Van Wyden had mentioned how we never really kept good track of numbers, and he's right. We're starting now. But in 2020, you can see I've got it broke down a little bit better as far as North Beach, South Beach, rescues by Shays and South Haven PD, rescues by bystander, drowned victims, and personnel injuries. And the 2010 through 2019, I didn't have any there's no way to find out whether it occurred on the North or the South Beach. Our incident reporting software we had in the past was not very good for searching that type of info. The incident reporting software we have now we'll get it narrowed right down to the numbers. So, and as I said, we get dispatched over a VHF frequency. South Haven PD gets dispatched over an 800 megahertz frequency. It's a digital. We are still analog. It's kind of I don't know. It's a situation that's getting remedied as the years go on, or we are going to have a little bit better dispatch system here coming up that was on a millage this last year that passed. As far as when the question was asked of Chief Thompson, as far as if the PD gets dispatched first or if fire department gets dispatched first, I've talked with Tim McGee from Van Buren Dispatch regarding this, and because we'll hear it if we have a police radio on, sometimes we'll jump a call. We'll hear, for instance, 6-0 will respond to the South Beach possible drowning. If we have a police radio on, we'll jump the call. We'll start having the trucks and start going. It's easier for the dispatcher they'll have two dispatchers on. If this person over here is taking the call, the person on the left might be listening in and they hear South Beach possible drowning. They'll hop on the radio real quick, hit the mic and transmit. I've asked him if we could maybe get that relayed as well. We get toned out in the tone trips our pagers, and it opens up the pager to have the information relayed. And a lot of us, though, carry our pagers already opened, as you'd say, to where it'll pick up any transmissions that are going on in the county. And that's a situation we're working on, and we hope we can get it rectified as the days go on or the years go on. And I think that would give us a little bit better time in response down to the beaches and any of our calls for that matter. But when we are dispatched, we have standard operating guidelines just like any other service, and our career personnel that are on station will respond with the appropriate equipment. Our paid on call will generally respond right to the scene. If there is a paid on call member that happens to be close to the station that is checked off on equipment, they'll often grab something and bring it to the scene too. And as I was saying, the PD is often dispatched at the same time we are. The command staff generally report right to the scene. When we're en route, we often request Van Buren dive team, Coast Guard to be put on standby. It's in Van Buren's dispatches, SOPs or SOGs, to have those put on alert as soon as we get dispatched for a call. But we also just kind of give them a little bump and make sure that they have those agencies en route. Allegan County Dive Team, Great Lakes Recovery has a couple of drones that they've assisted with us last year. And Wolf Marines in St. Joe, gentleman down there, Jim, I can't remember his last name, has been very helpful in any efforts that we've had this last year, and we'll often contact him as well. Personnel response, our average response, and I went through quite a few of our calls that we had this last year. I'd say probably 80–90% of them, and we were very fortunate to have, out of our 28, 40 to 45 personnel, we'll have a good percentage of them come out and help. And on an average 5 to 6 hour call, We'll have about that many hours. South Haven PD, and I was talking to Chief Thompson about this last week. I put an average of 5. I meant to change that to 3. We did have a couple of calls last year where we're actually very fortunate they were going off shift and coming on shift, and personnel that were leaving, stuck around and helped us out. So, and as she'd stated before, we train together, we work together. We have a very good working relationship with the PD, and you often grow a little closer when you have some hairy scenes, and this last year we proved that. So before I get too savvy, Van Buren County Dive Team usually comes up with 6 to 8 members, and they've been very, very good to work with as well. They're, for lack of a better word, animals. They're good divers. They're very dedicated. U.S. Coast Guard, I have no idea. I don't know. That's definitely call dependent. We had, last year we had one instance where we had a helicopter. They were actually training from Milwaukee, and when we requested them, they were halfway across the lake, and okay, so they turned around and came back, and they had a very, very fast response actually. And so we've had vessels from St. Joe, we've had the helicopter from Traverse City, we've had the helicopter from Milwaukee, and Great Lakes Drone Company, like I'd mentioned in the earlier slide, and Wolf Marine as well. I couldn't tell you, but they spent a lot of time up here last year. Water rescue equipment, we will often at least respond with 1 ambulance. If we have enough personnel, we'll bring 2 if needed. The fireboat, conditions permitting, that's not for heavy duty waves. I'd say 2 to 3 footers is pretty comfortable in. Anything more than that, it struggles a little bit. It was purchased more for the channel to combat boat fires and things like that. But we'll often put it in and see if we can help. So our heavy rescue truck, we have all our life vests, helmets, rope guns, rope, communications and accountability equipment. We have 3 drones now and 4 FAA licensed drone pilots. We just received a drone this week. We had ordered it a week or 2 ago. It's got an infrared camera on it, and it also has a payload delivery device and we were just playing with it today. We have a couple quirks to work out of it. We actually tried it in the lake today, but it didn't quite work. It's got a little device on the bottom of the drone that will drop a payload, and that payload is, we ordered I think 8 cartridges with a water activated CO2 cartridge that inflates a rescue tube. And just another way we're trying to maybe buy a little time, give somebody a little bit of something extra to hang on to until we can get to them. 2 mules, one is provided by the city for our beach flag program, and one is provided by Vanderzees through with their Kawasaki program. They're equipped with Stokes baskets, additional rescue equipment, etc. Our PFD bags, our paid on call responders have, and our Mustang and cold water rescue suits for possible ice water or ice related rescues. Training in 2020, we had over 3,000 hours total training. 197 were devoted for water safety and rescue, and those were severely limited or hindered due to COVID restrictions. For those first probably 4 or 5 months, I'd say anything to do with anything respiratory and the like, we were being a little careful about that. As you all know, I'm sure you heard the horror stories of MIOSHA coming to different businesses, and so we were a little bit careful about that stuff. But in 2021, as things have loosened up a little bit, we've already put in 222 hours devoted to water rescue, and or water safety and rescue related. We've had, we usually try to hold 2 water rescue trainings per season. And we always partner up with the South Haven PD on those 2 ice rescue trainings per season. All of our career staff are going to go through DNR boat certification starting in June. It's something we've always taken our boat out and trained on it every year. And with new personnel coming on, we take them out and train, but we decided it'd be a good thing just to go through the DNR training program and get certified. So we have 2 certified divers, 5 additional divers are currently in classes. I think they finish up this next weekend. And our 2 current divers are a member of the Van Buren dive team as well. We have our own dive trailer that we can take to the scene and supplement Van Buren's trailer. And then for our beach interns, they have an 8-hour initial training before their shifts start May 15th. And then I also want to this year, if they have time and aren't too busy, well, I want them to make time to spend an hour per day devoted to continuing education, whether it's, I've had a bunch of different suggestions, and I think we'll kind of mix it up just so they can kind of learn some more things, train up some new things. We have monthly Van Buren County dive training, drone training, which happens quite frequently just in the back parking lot here in different winds and conditions. The fireboat training, probably, I'd say if we held EMS continuing education classes once a month, probably 2, maybe 3 are related to water-related emergencies, drownings, respiratory issues, and our operations training with South Haven PD. I missed a slide here. Whoop. Beach flag warning system. In 2013, we started contracting with South Haven City to assist with the beach flag warning system. Flag recommendations are listed by NOAA daily and updated every 3 hours. Beach flag employees run the flags up by 9 a.m. every day. Excuse me. Monitor NOAA for changes and monitor beach conditions for hazards and concerns. Personnel advise the South Haven Information Center of the flag colors and changes throughout the day. Any changes are immediately noted, and the flag colors and websites are updated. Upon entry to every South Haven City beach, the signs that explain the beach flags and conditions are within view of each flagpole. And initial 8-hour training is provided by Shays prior to their shifts beginning. Their shifts are from 8 to 3 and 3 to 10. We sometimes have a paid on call member that might just be looking for something extra to do. One of them is actually going to be covering one of the shifts this year. And he was one of our members that pulled one of our patients out last year. And but he's been solid too. I'm not going to brag him up, but that's kind of how our little floaters work. If we have somebody has a little bit of extra time, and they can go down there and assist us with that. And there's just kind of a sample of an example of what NOAA's website looks like. And I'll go into that a little bit more here on this next slide. They all, on green flag days, they monitor the flags, beach, water status every 3 hours by foot or by mule, educate the public. These are kind of their goals for the shift. They complete the CE for the day. And if we have any duties at the station, if it's kind of a green flagish day and not a lot going on, cold, for instance, we might have them come back here and do some things. Yellow flag days, they monitor the flags, beach status every 3 hours or more on mule or by foot, educating the public as they see them, and complete their CE for the day. And we kind of ask them to stick around the water for evaluation and education on those days. Red flag days, we check the flags and the conditions more often. And if it's, Sean Russell had mentioned earlier that the lifeguards would on real crappy days would, be in their personal vehicle. And that's kind of what we do too. We'll put them in a Shays vehicle and have them parked down at the beach and educate or just make sure that nobody's trying to go in the water. And every day, South Haven City Information Center posts and updates the flag conditions as reported by beach flag safety personnel. And the conditions are posted to shays.org, South Haven City's website, Shays Facebook page every day by 9 a.m. every day. And I'll get a little bit further into some things we're looking at further on in the presentation, or that we're doing, I should say, as well as the interns monitoring on the beach. We also have a monitor here at the station. We have a monitor down at dispatch, or the information center, I should say, that we look at quite frequently too. That's also one of their duties at the information center, is to monitor the conditions and see if they notice anything. They're far enough back, sometimes they can see a rip heading out toward the lake where you might not be able to see it if you're on the beach. And as posted on the earlier slide, the information center posts and updates the flag conditions. The South Haven IT department developed a QR code that will easily inform visitors at the beach of conditions. When scanned, visitors to the beach are taken directly to South Haven's website for beach flag colors and beach conditions. They also implemented an alert system that will alert visitors' phones. In same with the QR codes they'd hit on, and I'm happy they did. Everybody's getting used to QR codes again. It kind of phased out 2010, 2011, but as ordering has changed in restaurants and everybody has a QR code, our IT employees thought, why don't we try it? And I think it'll work out pretty good. I think it'll work out great. It takes you right to your beach flag conditions. And the other, the name of the program is Nixle. If I happen to refer to it later and you don't know what, and I don't refer to that or mention that, if you text beaches to 888-777, it will take you to a link. It'll give you a link to where you can go then check the beach flag colors, and if there's any updates, you will automatically be alerted as the information center changes the flag color. And I think that'll be another good way to educate. I know you shouldn't be bringing your phone to the beach, but I know a lot of people do. So, in the QR code, I'm going to plaster it on everything. Our beach interns are going to have it on their t-shirts. We're going to put it on the mule. We're going to put it on our beach safety placemats when we have some new ones printed up, on our emergency vehicles, on the websites. I think it's a really good idea that I hope will pan out well. Our goals are to educate, and Sean had hit on it in an earlier meeting, that education and communication are probably our biggest tools. And I think we really need to be out informing and just having a conversation. I mean, it doesn't have to be, I'm ordering you out of the water type thing. You just, hey, why are you going in the water? It's kind of crappy out, and I think that'll mean a lot, as long as we can get our folks down there and educate a little bit more, communicate a little bit more. Medical first response, we purchased a couple of bikes last year. We're going to get out on some busier days over the weekends, over busy festival weekends, if any festivals pan out again this year with COVID, and gets us down there a little bit quicker, and maybe a little bit earlier notification. Some of our challenges, we're busy. Summer's busy. We average about 6 calls per day over the course of 365 days per year. We average 8 to 9 calls a day in the summer months. And they're not only our beach related calls between 1 and 8, but the majority of our calls in total occur between 3 and 11, 3P and 11P. So, and I'll brag them up again on a later slide, but I can't say enough that we have some very dedicated personnel that are coming to all of them, and I'm very proud of that. But in addition to water safety rescue, we're also making time for our fire, our EMS, or confined space rescue training, extrication, mass casualty, rescue task force, monthly shift training. I know I missed a few in there. Water and weather conditions, majority of our water related emergencies, as you all know, are a majority, not all of them, are when conditions are pretty unfavorable. Our fireboats pretty limited to get out and give assistance. Drone capabilities, we had them up last year in 25-mile-an-hour winds. They actually did really good. With our payload system, it's going to drain the battery very quickly. That's why we're kind of practicing with them now and seeing our limitations. Communications and accountability. Communications are tough. We're still working on that and trying to figure out a way to improve when we're down there trying to help and perform a rescue. This last year, for instance, when we were out in September, Dawn, one of our members, was out, geez, probably, I don't know, 100 feet. And it was so windy, so wavy that day. I mean, we had the rope tied to her, and, you know, she was yelling us to pull her in. And I mean, geez, if you can't hear Dawn, you can't hear anything. So, I mean, it was actually kind of a eye opener. Communications are not fun with all the wind and waves. And accountability, we're working on a little bit better accountability for this next year. Personnel fatigue, physical and mental. We had some pretty heavy duty calls last year that put a pretty big toll on some of our members and some of our PD. And it's been tough, especially since we are from this area. It's, as you all know, being from the area, you kind of take stake in it, and it's the tolls continue long after the incident's cleared, and we worked through them. And costs, expense for, and there again too, I was using some of our calls where we had, 14, 15 personnel where we're down there 4 to 5 hours. Our costs that I can get a pretty good guesstimate on for Shays run anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000. This includes equipment, personnel costs for the average length water rescue call. It doesn't include ongoing search efforts. Van Buren dive team, Allegan dive team, Coast Guard costs. I don't know. We don't get bills from them. I've never seen a bill. I've never heard of a bill coming from them. And so a total cost for that, I really wouldn't have any idea. Education, this kind of goes back to our previous slide. As far as educating visitors with our QR codes. And this is the QR code and then example, or I shouldn't say an example, but if you text beaches to the 888-777 number, the flag colors and updates. And then here is our beach safety placemats that we handed out at restaurants last year. Our rental agencies, our realtors, they're a big hit. I was very, very happy to be a part of that. And I think it worked out well. I believe it was put in the Good Visitors Guide. I know I said that wrong, but with South Haven City this last year. And it's just been a great way to get the education out there. And there again, once we get some new ones made up, I still have I think 5,000 to hand out, which will go pretty quick. I want to plaster that QR code in that Nixle message on there too. Grants awards, probably over the last, I'd say 3 years, I have these 2020 and or in 2021 mentioned on here, but probably over the last 3 years, the majority of our grants awards that we've from local businesses have been allocated toward water safety. The placemats, our our PFD bags we put together through grants from Albemarle, Meyer, Bronson Safe Kids, some local residents donations. This last year we had some more, or this year we had more donations last year that we're putting towards this year from South Haven Visitors Bureau, the Rotary, Meyer again. And we're also going to hold a pancake breakfast the tail end of May. And those proceeds will be used to hopefully purchase, hopefully we can come up with enough money from there to purchase an Aqua Eye device. And this is a device that was developed by, I'm going to butcher it, so I'm not even going to try. Essentially, it's a device that you can put underwater. You hold 12 inches underwater and it will scan. And it's developed to pick up not stumps, not logs, not rocks. It was developed and designed to pick up and to help find persons or victims that have drowned. And there again, it's another tool that I'd love to have in our toolbox to try to, if any, if there's been plenty of documented cases with cold water drownings, that if you can still get to a victim within an hour's time, you have a good chance of resuscitating them. Not every time, obviously, but this is something I'm looking forward to hopefully putting on our trucks and employing this next year. And in conclusion, I hope I was able to explain how we operate, our equipment that we have, some of our procedures that we follow, and some of the challenges that we face too. And like I said, we have a very good, very dedicated staff that's put a lot forth toward everything we do here, and very proud of them. So thank you all, and feel free to ask any questions.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. And before I open it to the committee members, I do want to say that I know the placemat was well received by the community, so I think keep that going. And then secondly, I have to admit, when you first started the presentation, I said, oh, this looks like a city council orientation of Shay's presentation. And then after a couple slides, you really turned the corner. And now I'm wondering if you guys actually fight fires anymore, or if you're just beach safety people. So,
Right.
But great presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to, because I don't think a lot of people maybe understand quite how we work. And since we started an authority, it's no longer South Haven Fire Department. And yeah, we do a little bit of everything, and our fire numbers have went down. When I started, we might have had 12 to 20 structure fires a year. Now I think we have probably 6 to 8, which is a good thing. Our fire numbers also include lift assists and things like that too. But yeah, I wanted to kind of give a quick background and education on how we work, so that maybe if anybody hadn't known that.
No, that was excellent. And once you throw your fire slides in there, you have a pre-canned, because this is recorded, you'll have a pre-canned presentation. You can just throw the video out.
Right.
So,
Tim?
okay, Timmer.
Tim?
Yeah, Brandon, a question for you. On your interns, I'm assuming that is a paid position.
Yes.
Would you mind sharing us what you pay for that position?
No, they start out at $12.08 an hour. And I believe 25 hours per week. We figure in a little bit for overtime in the budget, but, and they also are eligible for $1 per hour bonus at the end of the year if they've met we had two that had to leave a little bit early last year due to college, and we still gave them their bonus because they were good kids. So, but yeah, so at the end of the year, they're eligible for $13 an hour if they meet most of the requirements anyway.
Expounding on that, are you having problems filling that position?
Yes and no. We actually had, I've got 1, 2, 3. I've got 3 shifts out of the 4 positions. I have 3 that are filled. I shouldn't say full-time, but on a part-time basis. I have 1 still open, but I have 2 or 3 returning from last year that would, and also 2 retired members, 2 retired Shays members that were willing to fill in any shifts. So this year will be great. I don't think we'll have any problem. And this last year, actually, we kind of lucked out. Well, the last couple of years, we will, if we happen to get busy, or if one of the interns happens to call in the morning, we, if our assistant inspectors, if one of them is able to run out and get them up, because they start at 8 in the morning too, we'll have them go out and run the flags up for us, and until we can find somebody to fill in the rest of the shift.
Thank you. That was very helpful. One last question for you while I have you. On your rescues, would you say the vast majority of them are on red flags, or at least dangerous water?
Yeah, no, we did have a lot last year getting swept off the pier. Okay. That was a large amount, so those were definitely some nasty days. We did have Jasmine in June, and that was a green flag day, beautiful water. But aside from that, either yellow flag or red flag.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anyone else?
Tim?
Yes, Tom.
I would like to say to Mr. Hintz that I think he gave a hell of a presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stegman.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Sean, go ahead. Sean, and then Cam.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, agreed. Brandon, nice, amazing job. That was fantastic. One of the best presentations I'd seen in a long time. So great job codifying the numbers and everything. That really helped us kind of understand what's been going on. Quick question for you regarding, so the whole reason why we're here right together is beach safety, to try and figure out if there's any improvements we can make or what we can do. What is your opinion of what is the biggest gap, right? Every plan always has a gap or a seam. There's always some weakness or something that we can do better. What is the thing, in your opinion, that we can do better, or that we can do in regards to beach safety? Like, what is it that we need? What would help those numbers? I guess when I see 23 rescues, the 3 drownings obviously last year. What is that in your professional opinion? Like, that's what I would really like to hear.
I think education, and you'd hit on it. And like I said, it kind of, guess you could say, struck a chord with me that we need to be down there having conversations. Hey, what, maybe a little windy today, maybe you shouldn't be heading in, and you'd said that, and it was like a little light bulb went off. Like, yeah, we need to communicate and educate more. And I think that's pretty important. I think it's very important. And whether it's with literature that we're putting out, or just face-to-face contact.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. That sounds really reasonable, and I appreciate your expertise in this. I know you guys live it every day, and we appreciate it. So along with the police department, yeah, you guys do a good job. So thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay, Cam.
I got a couple of questions, Chief, and I'd like to echo everybody else's sentiments. Thank you so much. And I neglected to say that to Chief Thompson before as well. As sincerely, your community appreciates you, and I'm sure neither one of you hear that enough. So thank you very much. A couple of questions, 3 quick ones. In response to, or in regards to response time, what starts and stops the clock for you?
Starts the clock, and that's kind of the tricky thing with dispatch is when, if we got dispatched at 7:44, Shays respond to South Beach, blah, blah, blah. If they started that dispatch at 7:44, they might get done talking at 7:45. So then, that adds on a minute, I guess you could say. When we had our own dispatch center, the minute they took the call, the old time card punchers, they would stick it in and it would get the hour, minute, and seconds. And we could get things dialed in a little bit tighter then. It's a little bit tougher now, but that starts the clock. If they said, if they continued their dispatch right now at 7:45, that's the time we put down for dispatch. Arrival, we use our first arriving personnel on scene, our first arriving member on scene. And if it's, whether it's command, whether it's myself or Keith Beerhalter is out in our command vehicles, or the ambulance might make it down. Or I know that now I also went back and took some numbers from just EMS calls that occurred at the North and the South Beach. And so it was primarily just the ambulance responding, and the times were right on par. Now, some of them were 2 minutes. So there again, just depends on when they start and stop the dispatch. And it'd be nice to get them dialed in a little tighter. And that's something I need to start working. I have started working on it. We need to get that tightened up a little bit so we can get a little better time.
I think that's fair. Of the 16 water-related incidents that we had just last year, would you say that we were hitting that $5 to $6K amount on each of those incidents, or on a few of them? Or do you maybe even have an idea of the costs associated with water-related incidents last year in total?
I would say those would probably be the more intense calls. A few of those calls were, in and out, Jasmine, for instance, she was, we had 2 ambulances down there and a lot of personnel, but we were off the beach within half an hour, if not sooner, from the time of dispatch till we were done, because it was, we'd transported her to the hospital and we transported her nephew. And so that, that one, it was an intense call, but personnel wise and equipment wise wasn't as intense. But then some other calls that we'd responded to that were more intense, and they are more personnel intensive, I guess you could say, and equipment intensive. I'd say you could probably average out between all of them closer to 4-ish maybe.
Okay. Last question is on the Aqua Eye. It appears it would be helpful in recovery, but not in rescue. Is that correct? Or did we miss maybe discussing some of the benefits of that?
No, and I did kind of a terrible job explaining that too. The fellow that, I guess you could say he's a salesman, but I believe he's actually one of the developers. They're very confident. They've used them for drowned victims that they've resuscitated in that. It's almost like a thermal imager in a burning building. And I know it's kind of hard to explain, but if this whole room was smoked up, you could take a thermal imager camera that we use for fires, and see, we do have fires, Tim. Hold it up and you could see the fire burning in the corner through all the smoke, through everything. This operates the same. A couple of our personnel actually messed with it and got in the lake, and while the others were demonstrating it, And it cuts right through the murky, cuts right through the waves, turbulence, everything. And so I'm hoping that if anything, if it wouldn't help us recover a viable victim, it would bring families closure. If the victim wasn't, able to be resuscitated, it would bring the families closure quicker, which I think is extremely important.
I think it is too. And the reason I ask about that specifically is we have on the call, and I'm in pretty regular contact with the family of one of our most recent drowning victims. And they're asking about possible costs associated with that, and maybe the hopes that they could help with some fundraising in securing that tool for you all.
That'd be great. Yep.
Do you have a cost or no?
5,400.
Okay.
And that would be, that's the unit and a 3-year technology update, I guess you'd
Warranty.
say, maintenance type thing.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kim.
Okay, any other questions? Because we are getting close to 8 o'clock and we still have one more presentation to a very patient woman.
Tim, just one
Yes,
question.
Tom.
How many of those units would Shays like to have?
We would like one for sure. I don't know that we would. I don't know that we would need two. I don't think two would hurt anything. Now we could call upon, which if and when we aren't able to raise the funds for one, Berrien County did purchase one, so we could always call upon them. And that's the plan until, if we do, knock on wood, happen to have a water event, we'd be contacting them to see if they could have somebody head up with theirs. But yeah, one would be great. Two, I don't think it hurt anything. A couple out there scanning at the same time would probably be very beneficial.
Well, thank you. And it sure seems like we should be able to make this happen for you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then just before I close this out, I want to follow up on one of Cam's points. And this goes with the city overall, I think, when we're talking costs associated with various activities. Something you have to keep in mind, I don't think the number that Brandon said, like between $4,000 and $5,000, is a additional cost necessarily, because all of our staff and departments have a hourly operating cost that is fixed. And I assume a lot of that is just taking how many hours a particular activity was and multiplying it by that fixed cost, that whether an accident or you name it happened, we're paying it anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
On that though, would it be fair to say that any on-call personnel would be over and above that day's budget, say?
We budget, for a certain amount, we have personnel costs paid on call and full, career members budgeted every year. And like Tim was saying, it's all part of the budget at the end of the year. But as far as what the cost for an example, that's about what it would run. But yeah, that's one thing that our board has been very, very, great with is if we need it, when we need to be there, we're going to be there. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Chief, and we got to keep moving. So we'll move on to 4B now, Victim Services, and this is Mary Ann and Kate. Do you have any additional before we start?
I don't have anything additional, but just to say welcome to Mary Ann, and thank you for being so patient, and please go ahead and let us know what Victim Services can do.
Thank you very much for including me tonight. I'll try to be as brief, give you an overview. I've been a member of Van Buren County's Victim Service Unit for over 8 years. It's a volunteer group. We're trained under the direction of the Van Buren County Sheriffs and the Michigan Sheriff's Association. Our presence frees up the staff, the police or whoever are with the families, that we can kind of be there, answer their questions, let the officers do what they need to do. We're just there to assist. We can answer questions for the family, such as what happens next, funeral preparations, why there may have to be an autopsy, why the crime scene takes so long, questions like that. We can also refer them to any other resources that they may need at the time. When we're on the scene, we can play a role by lending support and assisting victims and witnesses through that first few hours while they're under shock or can't understand what's going on, or, you know, feeling just really desperate. Sometimes we are able to take the victims to a secondary site, so they're not right there mixed into the middle of whatever the scene might be. We can help with homicide, suicide, traffic accidents, breaking and entering, especially if it involves elderly people. We can also go with the police and provide death notification, so we can stay with the family until they can get their, you know, their close contact people to come in and be with them. We can help with house fires, be with the family until we can get a hold of Red Cross, loss of children, death of children, natural deaths, and obviously, excuse me, drownings. We rely on the officers on the scene when they feel that we could be used, which is hopefully almost every time. They will contact dispatch. Dispatch has our information. We have an on-call list. We have about 20 volunteers in Van Buren County that covers just Van Buren County. They contact us. We put a 2-person team together and we go to the scene. We make contact with the police, whether it's city, sheriff, state. They give us an overview of what's going on. And then we go into the family and, you know, do whatever it is that they need at that point. Sometimes it's just sitting with them on the couch. Sometimes it's taking care of young children. Sometimes they don't really need us right there. So we know to step back and then just kind of wait and watch how the scene plays out. And we stay until, usually till the body is removed from the home, just so they're not alone. So that's, you know, that's a real quick overview of what we do. Like we said, we're available for so many different scenes. You know, we're just there to help the victims, the families, in that immediate time that they're having, you know, a terrible incident in their life. Is there any questions or anything else?
Marianne, I didn't notice that there was any contact information or any information, printed information in our agenda packet on your team and your services. Is there a website you can point us to? Or
yeah, you could go to Van Buren County Sheriff's Department, and they have a link at the top that a drop-down box, and it'll say Victim Services Unit.
Perfect.
And that kind of gives you another overview of what we have. And I'm also gonna, again, give some pamphlets to Chief Thompson so that she knows she has it there on hand.
Mary Ann, what budget do you operate under? Which budget do you operate under?
It would be under a Victim Services Unit through the Van Buren County Sheriff's Department. We do have some grants, you know, yeah, but none of us are paid. It's all volunteer.
Oh, it's all volunteer.
It's all volunteer.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
Mary Ann, you might want to tell them how long you guys been around.
Mhm.
To the best of my knowledge, I think we've been around between 25 and 30 years.
Yeah, because you were there when I was there.
Yeah.
Sean, did you have a?
I do, yeah, just a quick comment and a question for Mary Ann. First of all, I can't believe the work that you do, and now to find out that you guys are all volunteers, it's unbelievable to me. That's amazing, and thank you for what you do, because I cannot
welcome.
imagine doing that and being in those positions with families. So I know families personally that have been helped by that, and during that time, it's an amazing thing that you do. So thank you, and thank you for the continued recruiting. Question for you regarding beach safety particularly. And I'm guessing because you have a lot of interaction with the public, and then of course the victims' families specifically, what are you hearing what can we do more? What are we lacking? What are they asking for? What do they say, I wish there would have been, or I wish we could have done? What's the public feeling from your perspective?
The two scenes that I was involved with the families, they both said, we just didn't know. We did not know what the lake would do. They aren't locals. Obviously, they were from, Middle Michigan. They didn't know that Lake Michigan can do what Lake Michigan does. They didn't notice really the flag system. When they got to the beach, they're looking for, a place to park, where they're going to put their beach chairs and all of that. They're not looking at all of that because they had no idea to look. So yeah, that was the biggest thing that both families said. We had no idea that this lake can do this. We are completely powerless.
Interesting.
Thank
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions for Mary Ann?
I've got a quick associated question,
All
but
right.
it might be for Chiefs Hins or Thompson. Is calling in Van Buren Victim Services, is that part of our standard protocol right now in a drowning incident?
We'll contact, I don't know if it's protocol for Van Buren Dispatch, but we call up victim services quite frequently. Drownings, fires, like Ms. Milky had said, they're pretty much between victim services and Red Cross. We contact them pretty quick.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mary Ann.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary Ann.
Thank you. Glad to be a part of this.
Thank you, Marianne. When we get those when we get those pamphlets, we can circulate them out to the group. Plus, we'll put them in the packet kind of after the fact.
Absolutely. Okay, Kate, thank you. I'll get them to you.
Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, we got 8:02. We're doing pretty good. So item 5 on our agenda is public comment, 3-minute limit. And state your name, an address, right, Kate, or do we just need a name on this?
I think name will be fine. I know that we can ask for address, but many people have just been saying where they just, maybe the town they live in.
Right, okay. So I see one hand up that I think is a public comment. Are there any others?
Not
Alright,
so
so-
far, but I'm sure, remember there's a raise your hand icon at the bottom of the screen, or if you're on a phone, it's dial *9. And we can get started with Soha resident. It's 3 minutes. Time ready.
Okay.
And I'll ask Soha resident to go ahead and unmute. And if you can state your name.
Yes, hi. I was trying to unmute. I had my cursor and pointer were not working well. Mary Hasley, and my name has not been spelled correctly at the times I've commented. It's HOS as in Sam, LEY. I am located at 726 North Shore Drive, South Haven resident, over 1 year, just over 1 year. So I have a couple comments that bridge across both Marianne and Brandon Heights presentations. So with the QR code, I was just curious, could that also be put in restaurant windows and store windows in South Haven? That might be areas where people might see it more frequently. You noted it's on the flagpole, but as we've heard from Marianne and also just comments from previous presentations, that people don't notice, unfortunately, the flags. They're focused on parking their car and getting into the water. Is there also a place where people pay, where you could put that to make people more aware of the flag conditions and learning about that? And also you had commented that last year the stats were 3 people drowning, but it didn't say whether it's North Shore or South Shore Beach. And I know that there's a sequence in changing the flags, and I think it's like a 20 to 30 minute, maybe longer time frame from the first one to the last one. And maybe if all the drownings were at South Beach, they could start at South Beach. And I know that there was commentary about when the flags were changed, that people, the person changing the flags went to the beach to make sure people in the water were aware of that. But is that standard protocol? Is that possibly one person does it, but not everybody does it? It seems like that might address some of the issues that have unfortunately resulted in the drowning. With regard to the Aqua Eye, I was just curious, is there some way you could advertise that more and associate it with a 501c3 group? You might be able to get more donations and be able to purchase them through community outreach in that respect. So those were my comments.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any other ones? I don't see any.
No other comments right now. It looks like Brandon's got his hand up though.
I took note of all of our comments, and I did one at our drownings last year. 2 were at South Beach, 1 was at North Beach. Aqua Eye, yeah, we'll advertise it. Our Paid on Call Association is actually 503, so it we can take donations through there. But yeah, no, thank you for the comments. There's a few things we're actually working on, so.
Yeah, he's gonna make his presentation longer. He'll add up another page with those comments. Next up, correspondence. Did we receive any correspondence?
I don't believe so. I'm a little scattered tonight, so if I have, I'll make sure that we bring that at the next meeting. I do know, however, that we have had some new signs put out there that demonstrate where the pier and the federal property, if you're leaving the South Beach and entering the federal pier, those have been installed out there. Part of the reason why we've done that is because the Federal Corps of Engineers have actually removed their sign, and they really couldn't tell us what year they could put them back in. So we took the initiative to get the signs made and put them out there. Tom has taken some pictures of those, as well as some of our other signage, as well as at our next meeting, I think when we're coming back for recommendations, Tom Renner and Randy Van Wynen have put together some information on signage that I will be sending out to the group. I know Randy put together some suggestions on sign placement and maybe some verbiage and how to display it all. I just recently got that from Tom Renner, who made that as a PDF, and I'll share that with the group for our next meeting. Does that kind of cover, Tom and Randy, what you guys have been working on? Okay.
All right, so that's part of our next steps. And so I guess we should say that the next step, the next meeting will be for this group to enter into some dialogue and start creating an outline on recommendations. And so I would suppose you'd want to really think about that starting right after this meeting. And if you have any really pertinent ideas you want to get out early, I would send them to Kate so she can begin compiling them and then share the entire mass with this group at the next meeting, and hopefully we can start putting it in order. And the next meeting would be that May 20th or 27th.
The 20th is the Thursday. So the 20th is the third Thursday of the month. That's typically when we don't have any other city meetings scheduled then.
Okay. So May 20th, jot that on your calendar now. At 6 p.m.
Hey, Tim,
And it's put all the meetings we've had together now, and hopefully we can come up with some good ideas for city council to consider.
It looks
Tim,
like Randy's
Any
guys
other
got-
comments for item 7 here?
yeah, Tim, is it permissible for us to send our stuff out if we have ideas or stuff to get them out to the other members prior?
Yeah, I think this is a little different, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, or even Nick, if he's still here. He's not. But unlike elected officials, I don't think this ad hoc committee is quite as tied. Is that correct for sharing info? I mean, it would still go through City Hall. It wouldn't be, you wouldn't email one or
Okay.
two committee members direct. It would have to go to everybody, I
Go-
believe.
Yeah, you'd have to get as long as we get it to Kate, she can get it out to us before the next meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah, that
Yes.
way we can read through it all before the meeting. That meeting would go a lot faster.
Yeah, that would be the intent, and that's why I say, think of it as soon as, start thinking about as soon as this meeting's done, and hopefully within a week or two, any additional ideas or ideas that you like that we've already discussed, send them in, and then we'll probably do like a priority exercise. Who like this, who like that, and the majority will go with the majority vote on it.
Okay.
Anyway, that's what I would anticipate. With you guys, who knows? Could go any direction. All right. So item 7's done, and we'll move on to 8. Committee members and staff member comments. Were there any additional staff member comments before I open it up to the committee?
No comments.
Okay. All right, so I'll call you out left to right, top to bottom on my screen. Chris, you're first.
No comments tonight. I thought it was a great presentation. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay, very good. Timmer.
Yeah, I guess my only comment tonight would be to both chiefs that were here and to Ms. Melky. Thank you all for your presentations, and definitely thank you for all the work you do for us. I feel like I've picked up quite a bit tonight to add to this, so just like to thank everybody again.
Okay. Renner. You got to unmute.
I have no comment.
Okay. Randy.
No, I have no comment. Nope.
Okay. Sean.
Nothing to add.
Okay. Tom.
Just to reiterate, I think the presentations from all the people were excellent tonight, and so that's about all I've got to say.
Okay. Thank you. Cam.
Sir, nothing additional at this point. Thank you.
Okay. And of course, I'll have to chime in and say, I want to thank Natalie, Brandon, Mary Ann, and Nick. And we didn't really get too much into what Nick had to say, but I think it'd be a good idea. We all take a look at his presentation in the off period here, because there are quite a few interesting points I think that were made, and maybe we just kind of skimmed over them. And we better have a good handle on that if we're going to recommend council do an ordinance or codify some sort of language. So take another look at what he had to say. And with that, I want to thank everyone for their time this evening. We're getting towards the end, which is a good thing. And so the next meeting should be pretty exciting because we'll see the fruits of the labor. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and supported to adjourn the April 22nd, 2021 beach safety meeting. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Timmer,
Yes.
okay, Van Wynen,
Yes.
Stegman,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Renner,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Doherty.
Yes.
We have motion carried.
Okay, very good. And we didn't have to postpone anything this meeting, which was great. So everybody have a good evening, and we'll see you at the next one.
Take care, Tim.
Thanks.